I'm Rory Makem,
And I'm Martin the Cogan.
and the two of us, we've been cruising together for years, as we are right now on the Norwegian epic on Joni Madden's Folk and Irish Cruise. And years ago, we were on a cruise, and I consider myself a connoisseur of tea. I love tea, the whole family loves tea. And Martine walked me through the proper way to make a cup of tea, and I learned I was been doing it wrong my whole life. And so we thought we'd walk through it here for the perfect cup of tea.
Well, I tell you, Rory, I grew up in a big house. There was 10 of us, and my uncles would be calling in, and there'd be kind of ramblers would call in to play music. So there was tea flowing in our house all the time. When electricity came in, there was a sign next to the kettle, please put on another kettle. You know, as soon as it was emptied out, there was another one going. And by the time that kettle was boiled, you knew the tea was ready for consumption.
Right.
And my granny's house, which was out in the countryside, we were living in the town, kind of a village, I suppose. And out in the countryside, she lived on a farm in Ballyvaran. She would throw in the hot water to scald the pot, and it was an aluminum pot at that time, and she'd swirl it around to detach the leaves from the end of the pot, and then she'd walk outside the door and she'd throw it over the wall into the street. And there was a 4-foot ramp for the hens to come in out of the haggard of tea leaves. There was a mountain 4 foot high of tea leaves at the other side of the wall. It was amazing. Composting before we ever had the term. And so we were always taught how to make tea, and there would be a big critique in the house of your tea.
Right.
My wife was afraid to make tea in our house in Carrigaline for many years. She's still very reluctant to make tea.
Right.
She'd only do it under very tough conditions.
Well, our house, I grew up in America. We moved to America when I was a baby. And you know, in America, they have 110 volts coming into the house for electricity. And at one point, my father decided that wasn't enough. And he had a leg of 220 volt put into the kitchen so he could bring a proper tea kettle from Ireland so he could get a proper boil to make the proper cup of tea. American electricity wouldn't do it.
Well, do you know what? It's not just the electricity, Rory. I have a theory that after Boston's great disaster, America took a disliking to tea and saw coffee as the cash crop. And they've been trying to torture tea ever since.
They have.
They boil the water only to freeze it, and then they make bitter tea only to sweeten it.
Right.
Like they're constantly tugging. It's an unnatural sense of cohesion. But here today, we're going to show you how to make a proper cup of tea.
Fantastic. How do we start?
You have to start with fresh water.
Right.
Right? There's no good reboiling that water all day long. The oxygen is all boiled out of it.
All right.
And you'd notice that in the taste. If water is in the kettle all day, or God forbid overnight, and you reboil it, there's a lack of something, lack of body maybe, inside in the taste of the tea. And then you have to get it up to 210 degrees Fahrenheit, that's 100 degrees Celsius, and it needs to come off a rolling boil. If you were working with a whistle kettle at home, that's high G. And so then you have to heat your thermos, right? Some places, the cup isn't too cold, but like if you're in Ireland, right, or Minnesota, the cup's freezing, and anytime water hits that, it absorbs all the heat straight away.
Right.
So you put in a little splash to scald it, and you throw it around, and then that water then is no good for the tea, right? It's had its time. It must be disposed of. If you're living in California in drought, cool it and then water your flowers. So then you put the tea bag, right? We have tea bags now. Ireland used to be the biggest drinkers of tea per capita for many years until the invention of the tea bag. And Rory's been so good to bring Cork tea here. This is Barry's tea, blended in Cork since 1901.
No better, right?
No better. Oh no, and Rory was asking me, this is the green label. We've always had the gold blend, which is the red box. But I got a gift of the Masters blend. And I tell you what, the main difference of that is the length of time that the tea is still potable.
Right.
Right? With the Masters blend, you could still drink it for about like 10 minutes or maybe 15.
All right.
Whereas, this tea, about 7 minutes and it starts to really wane and taste. You nearly have to throw it out and start again, like if it cools,
I've been doing it wrong.
And another side note, scientifically they found that, let's say you make your tea and someone rings the door and you have to go to the door. Now, you've made a perfect cup of tea, right? The temperature's going to be dropping. Do you put the milk in before or after? You're at the point where you've made the tea, what are you going to do? Science says that if you put the tea in now, it will lose less temperature by the time you come back from the door than if you put the tea in after.
Is that right?
That's right. Anyway, I won't tell you all the science about that, but that's just a hot tip for yourself. So with that, we're going to boil the water and we're going to make the tea.
Fantastic.
Right? So we boiled the kettle and I scalded the 2 cups and I put the bags into the cups. And then we pour the water. This is the important part, Rory. We pour the water over the bag. And you'll see that the colour that comes in the cup as you pour the water over the bag is a lot quicker than if you were to put the water in and then dip the bag and try and squeeze it out of it. Now, it's a very short time with bags in the 1 cup. If we were using a pot, you'd want at least 3 minutes for it to stir. And
how many bags would you put in a pot?
If it's a small 2-cup pot, I'd only use 1 bag.
All right.
They're quite strong, right? We have another cup here. And you could reuse this bag 3 or 4 times. My brother used to work on a building site and a fella used to throw the bag onto the ground and he would use the same bag all day.
Right.
He might get 6 cups out of it. Maybe men were stronger, but long ago. And so that's your bag there. And then I use a bit of milk because I find it slightly bitter because I leave it get stronger. And the stronger you leave it, the more bitter the taste.
Right.
Right? If you don't want milk and you want something a little lighter, don't make it as strong. Right. Now, in West Kerry, they would put the pot over a flame. It would have been an aluminum pot or an iron pot maybe longer ago. I don't know, maybe not. That they would put the flame under it and it would almost tar up.
All right.
And it would be so strong. It would kind of be that espresso. It wouldn't be that bad, no, but it would, they'd say you could trot a mouse across it.
Right.
To be so strong,
And how about sugar?
I used to use sugar all the time.
Right.
But I gave it up for Lent.
Right. But you don't mind it in a cup of tea?
The odd time I throw it in.
I'm going to put it in.
You should. You should.
Did you ever see the video of my granny making tea?
I did. She put about 600 sugars into it.
That's the way they do it in the north.
Yeah. And my father used to have sugar all the time. It was common, to make it, because the stronger tea bags long ago would have been much bitter.
All right.
And we have a tradition in Ireland, which they have in the Middle East as well, which ties us quite a lot to it. They call it tarof in Iran, but in Ireland, if someone offers you a cup of tea and you accept it straight away, it's seen as kind of a bit rude.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's like, isn't he very sure of himself? Whereas you have to kind of say, no. I went, to be too much trouble now.
Right.
And they say, I know you'll have a cup of tea. I know, no, sure we won't stay. Like we have to do another couple of stops now. I know you'll have a cup of tea. So about the 3rd time, that's, then she really wants you to offer you a cup of tea.
It won't be bad etiquette if I just take that now.
No.
All right.
We knew we were coming.
Right.
But after the 3rd time, you're in. And that's when you'd have your cup of tea.
Not bad. Here we go. Oh, yeah.
Go
Fantastic. As my grandfather said in that video, that's a smashing cup of tea.
Go